indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, shall we have a roll call of the members?
Augustinelli,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Yuli,
Here.
Fudge,
Here.
Racine,
Here.
Robertson is absent and excused, and DeGood.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. If any member of the public would like to step up to the podium, state your name and address, and make any comment with regard to the items on the agenda, they're welcome to. We don't have any official public comments related to projects tonight, but there will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the agenda. So feel free to step forward. And seeing neither of our two public jumped to take us up on that opportunity, we'll close that out and move on to review and approval of the agenda and statements of any conflict of interest.
Chris, from staff, we did have one thing to mention when we were looking at it today. They're both kind of similar agenda items, but we might actually suggest switching 7A and 7B. So we can have the discussion on the South Airport Town Line first. That might be a little better catalyst to a more broader master plan discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. If everyone's comfortable with that.
Any objections?
Nope.
All right. Hearing none, would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
We have a motion for Fudge, support from Klein. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. Motion passes. And we move on to review of the meeting minutes from July 9th.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the July 9th meeting, the draft minutes.
Second.
Motion by Racine, support by Yuli. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. Motion passes. And we move on to, is there any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Next up, reports. Is there anything from the township board, Molly?
Sure. Public hearing is set for August 12th on the Lake Point PUD, that Oak Hollow project. Town board passed the zoning ordinance amendments for substantial construction definitions and lighting. And the Skessel property rezoning to A1 A agriculture rezoning was passed.
Great. Anything from the ZBA, Bob?
No meeting.
All right. Anything from the Parks and Recreation Commission? We haven't met. And,
They will meet this next August, not this Monday, but the week from Monday.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
how about the Joint Planning Commission?
We met last week, and it was sort of the first meeting that, where we start reviewing the master plan that's about 15 years of age and is supposed to get reviewed much more frequently than that. And we got through about the first half of the master plan, and at our next meeting in roughly 3 months, we'll do the same exercise through the last half of the master plan. And then or thereafter, I guess we'll decide whether what we want to do with respect to that master plan.
Great. Okay. And John, Steve, what have you guys got for us?
Yeah. Also, in follow-up to Molly's, with the zoning ordinance amendments passed, if anyone wants to bring in their zoning ordinance binders, we can update those, and we can, otherwise we can have them for the next meeting. We can do the maps as well. I was working on that earlier today. So we can get updated materials to the Planning Commission. We attended the Zoning Outlets open house earlier this month. So this is a project by the kind of lead partners were the Grand Traverse County, Michigan Association of Planning, and Housing North. And there was a presentation by, I think the guy, he used to be with Housing Next. It was like a Housing North for elsewhere in the state, but he has his own firm now. I'm thinking of Ryan Fitzpatrick's, I don't remember his company's name, but he's been a housing advocate. He spoke on kind of like a housing angle, how this tool can be used for understanding that in a regional perspective. And I think they're going further into Northwest Michigan for the rest, for the next phase of their project. It's one of these that's interesting to look at from a regional perspective. We didn't really have much direct involvement, but it's also one that there's a lot of information that is hard to depict in that. For one, like it didn't have all of our PUDs on it. So like if you look at the zoning map, there's a lot of land that is either ag or R1 that actually has multifamily residential on it or some kind of mixed use. That's why we want to talk about in the master plan of doing mixed use districts. So it might be just easier to understand in the future. But I think it was still a helpful, like 10,000 foot view of zoning for multiple jurisdictions to try to get that understanding. So if people are interested, there is, we can provide a link or a demonstration at some point. There's a website that shows how to do it. So if we want to do that in a future study session, we can bring that up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then you want to talk about CIP and concept?
Yeah. So the Township Capital Planning Committee has finished their draft for the capital improvement plan. So that'll be coming to the Township Board on August 12th and as an introduction. And then it'll be introduced for review and recommendation to the Planning Commission at your August 13th meeting. We'll give some time for the town board to review it, and they probably won't take action, at least considering for it, until their August 26th meeting. So that'll give time for, at your August 13th meeting, to provide some feedback to the Township Board on the CIP. We have met a few times and took in the comments that you've provided. We've also, there's been quite a bit of adjustment, particularly to some of the water sewer projects that are listed in there. So it's changed quite a bit since the last time you've seen it, but that is moving forward. And again, that's going to be time is important because to go forward at this point, because it's going to provide some guidance to the Township Board as they go through their budget process in the fall here. Also, the South Airport Road Corridor Plan concept, they did do a presentation to the Township Board yesterday evening. Also yesterday morning, met with staff from the Grand Traverse County Road Commission, including the Road Commission manager and a couple of their engineers. So they were generally receptive to the idea. So at this point, we'll probably be moving forward and looking at the Logan's Landing area, kind of the Logan Valley area, as kind of a starting point to at least have some discussions on what issues might be pertaining to that area in terms of land use, future development, and so forth, and convening some of the stakeholders, not just the township and the road commission, but the county, other entities like TART and the Watershed Center, to engage with them regarding that particular area. And if, depending on how that goes, we'll then look at formalizing a project scope and plan scope to actually then look farther at the entire corridor. So at this point, it's not a formal process, it's discussions and plans. Should be moved forward with we'll come back with a proposal for the Planning Commission to review and then make a recommendation to the Township Board. But I would see that happening, possibly at the earliest sometime later this year. And that's about it.
John?
I think I, for one, would be interested in maybe at a study session, if you guys want to give us a little more information about the zoning atlas.
Okay.
It seems to be a topic that's in the paper
Yeah.
periodically, so we probably ought to all be as educated as we can about it and know what it's all about and that sort of thing.
Okay.
All right, moving on through the agenda. We have no unfinished business tonight, but we do have 2 items of new business. And as you may recall, way back at the beginning of the meeting, we decided that we would swap A and B. So, A is PD 2025-72, South Airport Town Line Study Discussion.
So what we wanted to do, at least initiate the kind of the conversation for this particular area, and we're looking at an area that's roughly about 12 acres in size at the southwest corner of South Airport Road and Town Line, based on the conceptual review that you had back at the July 9th meeting. And so really just kind of providing some information here for your discussion. What I think we're trying to do is determine whether there could be other types of uses that could be incorporated into the master plan for this location. The master plan identifies it and envisions it as a high-density residential area, so a multifamily type of development area here. It kind of matches some of the existing multifamily that's in East Bay Township along the south side of South Airport Road, on the other side of Town Line. But there is obviously an opportunity to maybe at least evaluate to determine what other types of uses would be there besides multifamily residential. I did do some research on airport gateway districts from around the country, because that was one of the components that the conceptual review talked about, and that the applicants for that talked about, at least in their concept of a hotel and potentially other uses that support the airport and have some basis for that. And really, there's a great variety of different types of gateway districts. Some cases, they're industrial parks and supporting airports in that way in terms of moving freight and material and so forth. Other times, they can be kind of seen as welcoming gateways in terms of providing services. So that there's an enhancement to the community to kind of make it an entryway to the community, so it's a kind of a certain aesthetic that really presents a certain brand to the community and image out there. So there's that aspect of it, as well as providing a mix of uses. Some of the things that we've seen, and there are hotels, restaurants, there's office parks or office spaces. Can be sometimes residential zones as well. But certainly what that gateway can really provide different types of images that people might have, as well as providing those support services to the users of the airport. And certainly that has changed a little bit from what the airport historically has been, where we've often seen it as a gateway for a lot of visitors into the area. It's now kind of also a place that people from this region depart out into the world. Listed in your in the report there, some exhibits from the airport itself. There's basically 3 exhibits. The first one is a land development, and this one is more of a future development coming out of the most recent planning documents that were done by the airport, the airport authority. So some of the blue areas are their land development opportunities. Those are areas that are generally controlled by the airport. So they're not necessarily just typical development areas. They're under their control. As you know, so you can, if you look at the map, you'll see the orange area to the south. Off of South Airport Road, that's where the Costco is at, and then you see that Judson Court is the cul-de-sac, so you see the blue areas, those are the undeveloped portions. There is an area over by Wright Drive, which is kind of over there by the car rental area that comes out that they've identified. So those are kind of the areas that are closest that could have land development that wouldn't necessarily be the airport may lease those properties just as they lease the property for the Costco, but those could be airport-related types of businesses. The next exhibit is the actual zoning, so the,
John? Apologize, but those are actually not in the township, correct?
correct, these are all, this are on airport property, which is all within the city.
Thank you.
So that's essentially like their future land use map. And then the next one is land uses, and this is where they've identified through their zoning areas, really the green areas are aeronautical or non-aeronautical use. So that's why you have things like a Costco located there. The red one is a special use. That was an amendment recently made to the airport's zoning ordinance, just to recognize that there's some residential there to the east of that red area, so they wanted to make sure that there were certain design standards that are in place, should that be developed for, let's say, warehousing or some other type of use, that it be buffered between that operation and the residential to the east. And then the last part, I think I may have shared this or seen this before. This is the, I just wanted to show the image there that shows the kind of the plan for the terminal. So the far left side is where the current, kind of that dark shaded gray area is the current configuration of the terminal. And then you see kind of as it's branching to the right there, that middle part, pod essentially of the different gates. That's the phase that they're going to be starting here next year. And so that will add 5 more gates. And then at some point in the future, they'll do an additional expansion to the far right there, and that's an additional 5 gates that will be added. So the goal is to eventually have 15 total gates. So that's some information just so you can kind of see what's happening there at the airport. Also, I've provided some guiding principles. The details of those are really kind of adjusted depending on the future land use designation in the master plan. But these are some of the topic areas that are in the master plan for mixed-use neighborhoods and mixed-use centers. So these can kind of give you some idea of if you wanted certain design standards or elements in that particular area that you're concerned about, whether it's dealing with traffic or the residential area to the south. These are some of the areas that we talked about, connectivity. So whether that's internal connectivity, cross-access and so forth, or branching out. So if there's connectivity between this location and, let's say, farther down the corridor or to the airport, whether it's motorized or non-motorized, and what type of standards or what type of design elements would you like to see in there. Housing, different ideas for housing options, whether it's single-family, multifamily, or whatever. Infrastructure, if there are infrastructure improvement needs to support that, types of uses that might be in there. Land conservation, this may not pertain to this area, but it is in some of our other areas. Mixed use, so the types of mixed uses, that's probably the most important one, because I think we've talked about at the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, that there could be some types of commercial uses in there, but some would want to be avoided, such as we don't want to have an auto-intensive area perhaps. Neighborhood services, non-automobile oriented uses, parking, and that's parking locations. In some cases in the ordinance, it requires that parking be on the side of the building or to the rear and tries to avoid parking out front. And it could be other ways to locate parking within that area. Public spaces, so areas, whether it's a park space or some other type of amenity that allows people to gather. Site design really kind of gets into building placement, landscaping elements, lighting, signage, other site features that kind of create, that are those amenities and configurations that really kind of have a certain aesthetic or character to the design. In some cases, we had, these are probably maybe not appropriate here, but we did have, in the case of some of our mixed-use neighborhood, or mixed-use centers like Cherryland and in the Garfield Center area, which is where the mall, Grand Traverse Mall, is at a town center design. That means it's a typically more of a intensive type of area, but it includes a mix of uses as well as creates a sense of walkability for that particular area. View shed, so that was applied kind of to the McCrae Hill area. Water quality is another one that principle. So these are just to kind of give you some idea of when we're looking at this particular area, you're not looking just as the types of uses, but maybe some of those elements of if those uses did go in there, those are the types of things that you'd like to see potentially for that particular area. Well, I guess at this point, I mean, we would just probably want to know, maybe what when you look at that area, and if you're, maybe if you could bring up an aerial.
Yeah.
And just kind of get maybe what your thoughts are, just to refresher. I mentioned that if the area is planned for multifamily, but the zoning is a little slightly varied there. So we're looking kind of basically for there's that kind of that pink rectangle, which is local commercial. That's where the rifle shop is at. Then anything that's in yellow right there is R1 family residential. There is a little bit of existing multifamily, and that's those two long parcels that are in the orange. And then to the east of there, that gray, the light gray, that's actually IL Limited Industrial. So that tends to be, it provides a mix of uses, but it tends to be more on our heavier side of our industrial property.
That's to the west, right?
Excuse me, to the west, yes. And this is the area that we're not looking at, but obviously the area that is that Holcomb Court, which is to the south. That's kind of the boundary there, town line to the east and South Airport to the north. So that's kind of the general area that we're looking at.
And this is the future land use. This whole area was designated as high-density residential in the future land use map.
If I'm interested in this airport gateway district. If we were to create a new district that would be an airport district, what would that entail? How would we go about doing that?
So in the master plan, we've kind of identified, there are two different, there's a mixed-use neighborhood and a mixed-use center. So in the master plan, it's really not very extensive description. They're pretty simple, but very important in terms of providing the principles for that particular area. So we would be looking at, I want to use, I'm looking for let's see. I'm going to use the one as an example. I'll look for the Logan's Landing one. Just because that might be similar. So we have a description for the Logan's Landing area, knowing that it's and when we say Logan's Landing, it's not necessarily just the commercial area that we're familiar with, those two buildings that kind of straddle the sides of the Boardman River, but kind of that general area that you see there in purple. So the master plan talks about that particular area. It's commercial and office uses at an intersection between the Boardman River Valley and South Airport Road. It includes, Medalley Park, County Park, and there's some non-motorized connections through that area. And then so it kind of just describes it, and then there's some guiding principles to that we mixed use is encouraged, such as high-density residential, commercial, office, and entertainment uses. It talks about water quality, that development should not harm the water in that area. Due to its proximity to the lake and the river, it says that non-automobile oriented uses are preferred there, and so anything that's more automobile oriented, such as drive-through uses, vehicle repairs, gas stations, car washes, should be avoided and not considered appropriate for that area. Talks about the importance of public spaces, so there's the Medalli Park, there's the Boardman Lake Loop Trail that's there, there's the YMCA to the south that is still being used in the Boardman Valley Nature Preserve, so those are kind of some public gathering areas. And then connectivity in terms of both non-motorized, so like the Boardman Lake Loop, but also the importance of that river crossing for the South Airport Road. And the improvements are there so that when, should those occur in the future, that those all be coordinated in that particular area. So that's kind of a description that we have for that particular area. So I can imagine in the area that we're looking at this evening, what are some of the things that you would like to see? What are the things you wouldn't like to see there in terms of not just, you know, the types of uses, but any elements to it? Like, for instance, we might want to ensure that there's, that there's connectivity in terms of, non-motorized connection, so people could walk between the airport and that location. We talked about the importance of access management so that we don't have driveways going out on the South Airport. We talked about connection over to Town Line so people could get to the intersection there and use the light. We've also talked about not having automobile-oriented uses such as drive-throughs and that type of thing, just because that can be pretty intensive, can be problematic. Also, I think there's a sense too that there's an opportunity to create an image. This is going to be one of the first images that people have when they're visiting our area as they exit the airport. They're kind of getting their looking around and seeing. So this what happens here kind of also sets the tone for people's first impressions when they arrive to our area. So those are things that could be considered that we might want to include in the master plan should that be amended, if that's the route you want to go. I mean, you've had a chance to hopefully in the last couple of weeks maybe think about it a little bit and see what your thoughts are.
John?
It sounds like this concept of an airport gateway district is not new. It exists in some places.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could get us some sample other municipalities' master plan language about an airport gateway district that you think might be somewhat analogous or pertinent to us? I mean, the gateway to LaGuardia may not be what would be very relevant to Garfield Township, but if there's some way that you could find that and get it to us, it might be food for thought and give us some things that we think are good ideas or things that we think would be bad ideas.
Yeah, I did some of that research, and that's why I was just kind of summarizing some of the elements that I found in them. That's what those 5 bullet points are.
Mm-hmm.
But I can, and I was kind of digging in to some of the zoning for some of these. It's nothing, I didn't find anything truly innovative, but I certainly provide that. I mean, I found them everything from LAX to an airport in Wisconsin. So they're of great variety. Like, for instance, like I said, some of them kind of take more of an industrial approach to it, and they're really not looking at this as, they're looking at more from the freight transfer and all of that type of thing, and it's just like it's a very functional approach to the airport, where I think we're trying to see this differently, and that this is truly our gateway, to the world for people that live here, but also for visitors that are coming here too. So I can definitely look into that.
One other thought, and thank you for providing that stuff from the airport. I think I had asked for that, and I'm glad you got it. I'm a little disappointed, though, in looking at it, it doesn't really tell us very much, does it, about It just says land development opportunities, but doesn't give us any clue to what they might have in mind. And I don't know if there's any other documentation that they've created that talks about that, or if they're just keeping their cards real close to the vest and nobody has any idea what they're thinking about putting on any of these properties, but,
Yeah, there's, most of everything is geared towards the airport in terms of aeronautics uses, with the exception of those areas. And those were areas, I do know that it's a little bit different than, let's say, zoning for Garfield Township, because they own those properties and will continue to own those properties. So they have a lot of control and ability to dictate what goes in those areas. They are, because they'll essentially do that through leases. Like Costco doesn't own that land, they have a long-term lease with the airport authority. So it does give them a lot of ability to restrict that. But yeah, it's going to be something that they see as, fitting into that area that may be complementary or doesn't even have to have a direct relationship, but it just has some value to the community overall.
I think one of the things that I was trying to explore was what are they thinking they might do there? For example, the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, somebody's floating the idea about maybe a hotel in Garfield Township at this so-called area, the Gateway area. But I was curious to know whether there might be something similar going on at the airport, or maybe things that would be compatible, but not a hotel. We're gonna be going on at the airport, but doesn't look like the airport's telling us anything, so.
Well, I do have some information I can probably share just from my experience in sitting on the airport zoning board and as well as the joint zoning commission, in just having some understanding. One of their issues that they're trying to deal with right now is parking. So they're looking at some alternate, right now they have that long-term lot and that short-term lot. So they are looking at the possibility of some parking in that area. They're not ready to do anything vertical, like a parking ramp. They're probably gonna keep their costs low, and so it's gonna be more open lots somewhere. So they're trying to figure out where that is located. There's, I don't know, they are kind of looking at maybe the north side of Costco, see if they have a fit. I know they do have people spilling over into the Costco parking lot, so it's an issue certainly that they have to deal with. I do know that we did see a concept, at least for some warehousing and logistics type of operations there as well. Nothing concrete at this time, so is that potential. But yeah, I think they're just kind of there, the property's available, and it should somebody come forward, then they'll evaluate it at that time. Yeah, but there could be hotels there as well. Quite honestly, I was a little surprised. I think the Costco's been there since, I think, about 2017. And I thought there would be more spillover from the Costco, from what I heard and seen from other Costco's within the country. And surprised there hasn't been any interest into other retailers locating adjacent to them.
So the red area on the east side of Judson Street is commercially, it would be that spillover area you're talking about?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing as the green area, but it just has some additional standards, it's basically some buffering requirements.
Costco occupies all of the green area? Or?
South.
No, it just the southern portion, basically kind of the frontage area.
Okay.
I think they got about 12 acres, I want to say. And I think that's roughly about a
See, on
40.
that map, Chris, it's, what's in blue and orange is the same as
I
what
see.
you were
So they
looking
got
at
about
in
half
green and
of
red
it,
on the
less
next
than
page.
half of it even. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of space there left too. Costco is only about a third of it. Right
Yeah,
now.
I would say there's probably about 30 acres or so.
There we go.
So then the right drive parcel that's 3 acres. Well, before I go there, the two orange footprints look, and they say aeronautical use only, but you said, it seems obvious to me that eventually the airport might go vertical with some parking, and one could only presume that one of those orange footprints would be some kind of vertical parking deck. But then there's the green parcel right on Wright Drive that's 3 acres. that would be prime, perhaps a prime location for a hotel-type establishment.
It could be, yeah. I mean, I think the aeronautical ones are they're probably gonna keep those just because those are supportive to the airports. Like, for instance, those two orange blocks are car rental areas.
Is the forested land between the main airport parking lot proper and the Loop Road and South Airport Road, is that restricted in some way that it would always be woods? Or is it just not a developed part of their future plan right now?
From my understanding, I don't know if there's any restrictions on that. I don't
Okay.
believe there are, other than, it's really not, the only thing I can think of is looking at these in terms of, like a future land use plan and zoning, it doesn't show anything for that.
Mm.
So my guess is they're not anticipating of developing that, but I don't think there's anything necessarily protected other than that it's in the ownership of the authority.
So I'd be interested in that information,
Okay.
and certainty there, because I think that, we're looking at changing our master plan. They could look at changing their master plan, and that's certainly prime. I mean, if we're looking at an airport, what are we calling it, an airport gateway district, anything that we're putting on the south side of Airport Road or planning for, they could equally plan to mirror it on the north side of Airport Road, and certainly would contribute to a healthy airport gateway district to have both sides developed. But it would be nice to know what we have to anticipate for the immediate future, but also the long-term future
Mhm.
on the other side of the road. I'm also curious to know, are you envisioning, I see you've described the area that we'd be master planning as southwest corner of West South Airport Road and Town Line Road. It strikes me that we should consider master planning, even if the master plan exercise determines that what's currently master planned as industrial should stay as industrial. But we should, at a minimum, master plan from town line all the way to the airport property. Is that what you anticipated, or not?
Well, I guess it's however you want to look at it. I don't think,
Okay.
we're basically just opening up the idea, and so the extent that you want to review is completely up to you.
Which we could choose to go through the course of the exercise all the way to Garfield Road even, and that would still kind of be part of the notice that you've provided.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we haven't started a formal amendment process to the master plan, so this is all just really good, discussion. So how, that's, the scope of your review is good to know as well.
Okay. And then I had one last question or thought. So, trying to understand the process, we did have a potential applicant that came in and presented an idea, and, you're here tonight. Thank you. Procedurally, sometimes we would have an applicant come in and ask to go through a rezoning process. And then that's something that the applicant does as part of a formal application. Procedurally, does a master planning exercise, is that something an applicant can request? And then, because, with a rezone, the applicant is applying for a rezone. It seems as though what we're looking at is, and what you're suggesting, and I just want to verify procedurally, is that we had an potential applicant come in and say, hey, I think it would be a good idea if you changed your master plan and zoning ordinance, or did something to allow for me to do what I'd like to do here. And, as a planning commission, we're saying, yeah, we like that idea, and we're willing to take on the master planning exercise on our own accord. Not, because I'm not looking at any formal application for a master plan revision. Is that what we're doing? Are there other avenues, or just procedurally, could you lay it out for us?
That's essentially what we're presenting here this evening is it really kind of driven by the Township Planning Commission, because what they've proposed in my mind, would not be supported by the master plan. I mean, I don't see anything in there that references any type of non-residential uses whatsoever. And so I would be reluctant to, I mean, they could make a rezoning application, but our recommendation would be that it be, you know, that wouldn't go forward based on the master plan. So this evaluation is really, it's kind of, I mean, I guess the applicant could make that request, or it could just be evaluated by the planning commission. And I guess in my thought, knowing that the master plan is fresh and new for the most part, that it, you know, I think it's really in something that I'd rather see the planning commission take that initiative and just to determine what the preference is for the township, for this particular area. And then once the master plan, or should the master plan be amended, then we can talk about zoning options and what that might be for that particular area. But this really, if this were to be altered in its current designation, really needs to have some direction in terms of overall vision for this particular area before we dive into that. Just because when I look at this area, it's not a very large area, but there's a lot going on. And it's quite varied. I mean, you look at to the west there, you got an industrial, that's actually a subdivision plat for the most part, up for industrial uses, and you have the wetlands and the preserved conservation property to the south. You got a very expanding airport, you got commercial, you got housing going in. So it's quite varied. So I think it's important for the planning commission to kind of have that sense of what would work best in this area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or thoughts from the?
I was thinking similar to you as far as not limiting ourselves to just that southwest corner, and perhaps where we start is thinking about what is the footprint of the gateway and whether it may or may not fall fully within Garfield Township, but so where do we think the beginning of the airport gateway is, and look at that whole area potentially, not to take away any current uses, but to open up doors. You know, that's a small parcel there, and so just being a little bit more comprehensive with it makes sense to me.
Pat, Bob, anything to add?
So if we were to enlarge the area that you want to look at, what sort of, I guess we'd have to make a decision pretty soon about what's that area.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that what John's defined is just south of Garfield, south of South Airport and west of Town Line, and where we choose to have that end is part of the process of working on this master plan revision, right, John?
Yeah, I think there's some, I think you can look at it where there's like your main focus area, but then I think you can recognize those areas around it that have influence. But I think there are some things that are in place that are fairly restrictive and really kind of create some boundaries to what you're talking about. For instance, there's the airport itself. I mean, we don't see that being altered. There's the land that they have that cross, the runway ends at South Airport to the west, but then the area below that is all approach land. They've acquired some properties previously to widen that approach area. Actually, we have the airport overlay zones on there.
Oh, yeah.
You can click on that. So those are that green area. Those are areas that ideally they would like to restrict in terms of the uses that go in that particular area. So that kind of creates that western boundary, as well as that Welch Court, that industrial area there. That's pretty well, that's a plat for industrial uses. So that kind of creates that area. I mean, you can look beyond that on the other side, but that kind of gets into more of what we kind of consider kind of traditional South Airport corridor in terms of general commercial uses. And then everything kind of to the south is the Regional Land Conservancy has that. That's all part of the Mitchell Creek Preserve. Good amount of that's all in conservation easement. It may help to look and maybe have some contact or communication with East Bay Township. Just because I know that we've received a copy of that site plan where the apartments are going in, just right there, currently being under construction right there at the southeast corner of Town Line and South Airport Road. They actually have a small area out front that's designated for commercial uses. So that could be something that could be complementary, at least coordinated, so that there's, both townships have a sense of, vision. I know, at least at one time, I don't know if I think East Bay had kind of a airport-related district for that area. I'm not sure if that's still in place. But right along there is also a bunch of single-family homes along Town Line and Holcomb Court as well.
I think it's a good idea to educate us about what East Bay is doing and or planning to do in what to them is right across the street from us.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that necessarily dictates what we do, but we ought to be aware of what they're up to, and as we make our decisions about what's appropriate in Garfield.
And I think too, I know they have a connection, that new development right onto Town Line. And certainly I think we've talked about that in that area, basically from the intersection, maybe down several hundred feet, might need to be improved. It's not just the pavement, but it's, the width of that area is kind of narrow. I know in speaking with the road commission staff yesterday, they are going to be doing a chip seal of Town Line Road. They're hoping to do that next month. That's just a kind of a Band-Aid for the time being, just knowing that road does get some amount of traffic and needs improvement, but it doesn't really change the footprint of that roadway. It's just basically kind of filling in some of the holes that are there and kind of creating somewhat of a smooth surface. But that may need to be coordinated too in terms of how those improvements. We've talked about maybe there needs to be a traffic impact study in this area. It's just, I don't know if there's a need for any, and I'm not talking specifically for the Garfield side benefit, but maybe just this general area, just to ensure that maybe there needs to be some improvements to that intersection, particularly if other uses are generated. I don't know if the airport is going to be making any changes to that.
Molly?
Yeah, the road commission mentioned at the meeting last night that they are going to do traffic counts.
Mm-hmm.
It's been several years since they've done traffic counts on major roads. They did mention that, the traffic count, for example, on Town Line might be different because the road's in bad shape now. So people might avoid that road and go another way, where in the future they would, but at least we'll know how many cars are coming down Garfield Road, how many cars are, coming down Airport Road and so on. So we can tie into that information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they were going to have that done over the next couple of months.
Yeah.
John?
I guess one other question, John, is I'm looking at your draft notice of intent. The second line says the planning commission is preparing an amendment. Could we say something like the planning commission is considering an amendment? I mean, we might look at this and decide we like the master plan exactly as it is. Or is this language that is somehow got to be what it is?
Yeah, this is when you're actually going to, and that's the thing. I mean, I think that's where this discussion needs to happen and kind of give an idea if you're open to the actually making a change to the plan. And if you come back and say, well, maybe we'd like to look at it differently or pursue a different route. But I would say at that point, that's when you're actually ready to go forward and adjust the master plan. So that's just, I just provided that there should you be wanting to go down that path. But at that point, you're going through, we're going to be notifying the adjacent communities. It's all in accordance with the statute. So that's a pretty formal process that should have it, we don't have to have all the details, but you should have an idea that we are gonna be making a change.
I guess I, for one, am not sure that we're there yet. We may get there, and I've got no negative vibes at all about the idea of maybe a hotel there, but I mean, we're asking questions about, let us see what the East Bay Township area is planned for, and maybe try to get us some samples of an airport gateway district to look at, and I'd kind of like to look at that stuff before we come to the conclusion or have a serious discussion about whether we should come to the conclusion that we are going to amend the master plan.
So we have a discussion about whether we actually think we're gonna amend it, and then we enter into a master plan amendment process in the same form that we do when we, I mean, I guess we don't know we're gonna amend it every 5 years when we enter into a master planning process, but the assumption is that we're gonna change something every 5 years, right?
Well, every 5 years is just a review, and then if you review it, it's the way the statute says is you're required to review it, you don't have to amend it. And you
Okay.
decide at that point whether you need to amend it or not.
So then that would be a notice, and see,
Yeah.
I work with people who do this stuff, so I must not be paying attention.
Yeah, so after that 5-year review, if you want to go through and do amendment, the first thing you got to do is the notice of intent.
Okay, well,
So-
I'm totally on board with John. I think that, we need to have some more conversation about whether we, and I think that there's some enthusiasm for seriously looking at it, but, the extent and everything else, we probably want to give it another meeting or two to sort it out and talk about it.
Well,
Molly?
I certainly see a need, and I think when our applicants came in and put this idea forward, I was pretty excited about the idea of having a hotel at the airport or close by. All of us have traveled, which airports work well and how the surrounding works well. And, I mean, that's gonna be our job to kind of plan that out. It was interesting to find out that East Bay now is looking at commercial on the other side of town line that could extend over to our side as well. I don't think we're doing anything to change anything at the airport. It's a city jurisdiction and it's its own animal. So I mean, we could make suggestions, I suppose, but, I'd like to see us kind of move along and not take a long time to discuss it. Got somebody who's kind of interested in doing it, let's think about moving along.
I would agree with that, too. I don't want to kick this can down the road a long time. I just think that we've just been asking for some information, and so I don't think I want to go on the record as saying we're about to make an amendment when we haven't even
Right.
seen the food for thought that we're asking for. But I think we could decide within a couple of weeks or a couple of meetings at the latest whether we are buying into the idea of changing the master plan or not. So, but I agree with you, we shouldn't delay unnecessarily or for long at all.
Yeah. Okay.
It really helps to have a vision. So I mean, that's what the master plan process is, right? It's about creating a vision, a certain policy direction that you want to take. If you and that's what this discussion is intended to do, is to formulate whether you have a vision or not. And if you take the time and create that vision, it makes it really easy to get I would say easy, but it makes it easier to move through that process of establishing how you're going to make that happen through the zoning process. Whether it's utilizing some existing districts that we have or maybe creating something new. But if you kind of have a shared collective vision on what you want for that and the certain amenities or certain design elements that you're looking for in that particular area, it's going to make it a lot easier because you're just trying to implement that vision. So this is a very critical part to have collectively an understanding and agreement amongst the planning commission before moving forward. So, and just remember, this is something too that the master plan, the amendment, that will all have to go to the town board as well. So envisioning what the idea of what this area could potentially look, if you decide you want to go down that road, it's good to have it fairly clear. Makes a much easier process.
So I'm looking at the items for the next agenda, and I'm curious whatever the other folks think. I mean, we've got an update on High Tops Bar, an introduction for a special use permit for youth work, and then a conceptual review of Creekside Apartments. Am I correct in the assertion that that might be a fairly light agenda for us?
Some additional applications have come in.
Yeah,
We
some
will
of
say
that.
that.
So we may have more on the
Yeah.
agenda then. Okay.
Yeah, they're
well,
not all real heavy stuff, but there's quite a few
There's
items
a lot
on
of
there.
smalls, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So so you're saying we're gonna have more items on the agenda
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
August? Okay.
yeah.
I
'Cause I'm
anticipate
thinking-
maybe another 3 items on there.
My thought is maybe 20 minutes, half an hour of answering some of the questions that the planning commission has had that would help to inform what area we think we're gonna be, issuing the notice of intent to plan for, and some more information, and then that would inform, perhaps even at the end of that next half-hour discussion and presentation, would help to inform whether we move forward or not. Are you guys in agreement with that?
We can at least put it as like other business, and then when we get to it, depending on how much time it has
Sure.
been to, we can say how long do we want to discuss it now, or, yeah, are we ready to kick it forward?
And I don't know what everybody else thinks, but my thought is, I agree with you, Molly, that, moving this forward in response to an applicant's desire to see it happen, potential applicant, rather. If our meeting doesn't go 2 hours in August 13th, maybe we have this as an option to engage in. If you feel like you guys can be prepared.
Yeah, we can,
Present something.
we'll have, this is a lot of it just collecting data and information in response to your inquiries, and we can provide, it's gonna be more of an informational package of things, and
Mhm.
maybe we can, provide that to you, so whether you talk about it or at least have it as a communication, you can read through it, and, so then when we reconvene that conversation, if it doesn't happen then, but at your study session, then we're kind of ready to go.
Okay.
That's a good point.
So given that we're not gonna take any action, I don't think any further discussion or any actions necessary, correct?
That's
looking-
correct.
And you're looking for East Bay Township's info on South Airport Town Line, and then Airport Gateway kind of examples.
Yeah, and as far as East Bay, I'm only speaking for myself. I don't know what others are interested in, but I'd only be interested in probably like a 1/4 mile east and a 1/4 mile south. I don't need to know all of East Bay, anything farther than that.
Right.
What's kind of close to what we're talking
Yeah.
about
What-
is what I'm interested in.
They may have highlighted that in their own master plan. Yeah, we can see what they have, and
Yeah.
we just talked to Clara recently, so we can follow up with that.
Well, what kind of uses are they looking at in that commercial district in front of that multifamily?
Yeah, it's a fairly small area. I don't know what the square footage is of that, but it can't be very large. I mean, I don't think it's intended to have, and I think it's there. I don't think there's any plans at this point to construct it from talking to the township planner, but I can double check on it. But it is part of that site plan for those apartment buildings that are under construction right now.
Maybe you could share with us the dimensions at
Mhm.
least.
Well, I'll give you the
Of
site,
that-
I have
of
the
that
site plan, so we'll give you a copy of the actual site plan so you can see it. And we'll look at, see what they have in terms of their master plan and their zoning for that particular area. Because I think it's something that should be coordinated, just as, if we're talking about a gateway, we're talking about trying to create some image and a certain aesthetic. And then we'll also get you information about the airport too, a little bit more about, in terms of, could that wooded area be developed, or what are their plans?
Great.
I think there's actually, in that wooded area, I think there's some infrastructure in there that's kind of hidden behind the trees, but anyways, if there's anything else, just feel free to let us know, but we'll kind of collect all this information, get it to you.
Sounds good. Are we ready to move on to the next agenda item?
I have just one
sure,
quick
go
thing.
ahead. Yeah, please.
You had mentioned vision and kind of, as a launching off point, maybe other members can kind of thumbs up or thumbs down, but I had jotted down when we first started talking, a couple of things that I'd be looking for as like samples or places where we could start pondering. So something that sort of characterizes northern Michigan living and its natural beauty, perhaps carrying forward the aesthetic of the craftsman style from the airport, so there's some continuity, something with visual appeal, motorized and non-motorized connectivity, and then services for travelers that create local jobs. So when I think about vision, that's my starting point. And I don't know if anybody, like how that generally
I like it.
sounds to
Right on.
be thinking about.
Thank you for bringing up
Give
the
us a
non.
head start for next time.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the non-motorized, because as we were discussing it, I forgot to bring it up. I know people who were like, Chris, I can't really ride my bike to the airport and then fly to New York City. So that would be,
They put their bag on.
well, I mean, you can, small bag, small trailer, I don't know. I have friends who would love to have better accommodations to ride their bike to the airport.
The Brompton folding bikes, they're the thing.
Take it with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not have to pay for parking long-term at the
Stick
airport.
it on the bonus.
Yeah.
E-bikes with wings.
E-bikes with wings, there we go. All right, new business agenda item B, PD 2025-71, mixed-use neighborhood district, no, that's wrong, sorry. Yes, mixed-use
yeah.
neighborhood district discussion, yeah, I was right, thank you. I was confusing myself.
All right, let's go back.
So we've been talking about mixed-use districts for a while now, at least internally in the department. And so when we were going through that master plan process, we already had some ideas and images of what we could do in terms of changing and creating some new districts. There is mixed-use elements in a lot of our districts already. It's just maybe not always apparent. For instance, people don't realize, but in our commercial districts, like our general commercial district, yes, you can do multifamily housing. There are certain standards that apply. You can do housing above commercial or behind commercial. We have a provision for that. There's a lot of mixed uses already, or mixed use requirements in our ordinance, but sometimes it's not really that clear. And so part of this is wanting to take what you did in terms of the master plan for these mixed-use centers and neighborhoods and actually align that with zoning that might fit it a little bit better. So it's creating at least initially this first district, which we kind of felt is really something that would be one of our lower intensity districts. This would be similar to, it has elements of local commercial, it has elements of office commercial, and has some residential elements in it as well. But it's something that we would see as maybe kind of applied in specific areas that aren't really requiring a lot of intensity, not auto-oriented types of uses and so forth, but can provide some services to that particular area. And it would be one of potentially 3, we're maybe even talking about 4 different mixed-use districts total. They have different scale and different character, but they're really kind of drawing on the current commercial uses that we have and altering them in a way that might fit a little bit better for what we see in terms of demand. When we're looking at, when an application comes or somebody's looking to build something, and we're often looking back at our ordinance and trying to see how it fits in certain districts, sometimes it's pretty easy, sometimes it's a little complicated, and the uses might not really reflect some of the desires that people are looking to build in our community. So we're trying to find something that might be a little bit more of a balance. And certainly we're recognizing that in this day and age, there is the ability to mix uses a little bit more, just because of the notion that a lot of things are operated on the interior, or there are ways that some of these impacts have been mitigated through design and so forth, whether it's building construction, in terms of layout and actual site plan design, allows for some of these things to get better. Plus, I think there's an expectation of greater emphasis on things like walkability. So there is the interest to have access to other uses and not being in an area that just has one type of land use. You want me to continue, or you want to go?
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit, and also like a little bit of a, since this kind of dovetails with the discussion we just had as well, because it's sort of going back to the master plan where we identified, and you can see it on the future land use map and in all the descriptions of the different areas, the mixed use neighborhood and the mixed use center, and then kind of identified areas for that. I think in looking at kind of this airport gateway area, or kind of going back and looking at some of these areas specifically, what this looks at is how can we potentially implement those mixed use, or those future land use designations. The zoning plan part of the master plan sort of just says it would be valuable to create mixed use districts potentially, but this starts actually getting into the weeds of some of that. And perhaps in looking at this airport gateway, that might involve something maybe in between those two, or something a little bit different, but still in that kind of family of mixed use areas. So, and kind of what as staff we put together as draft was two things. We kind of put the development principles that were in the master plan and translate them to put them directly in the district right under the purpose statement, and it's sort of an extended part of the purpose of why you want to do a mixed-use district. And then looking at the uses, kind of using the local commercial, office commercial as a starting point, going into, and then kind of adding from there. And then also looking at having a section for site development requirements. This is something that the CH district currently has its own set of site development requirements, and the IG and IL have site development requirements. So kind of implementing that into implementing some of those development principles into something that could be reviewed on, say, a site plan application that would come in a theoretical district that looked like this. And then we also looked at where would this make the most sense out of like the areas identified in the master plan, specifically within the mixed use neighborhood designations. We talked about the Cedar Run campus, like West Front and Cedar Run Road. It's kind of a gateway into heading into the city, but a little slower traffic, a little less traffic than, say, South Airport 31 levels. Green Hill, which also kind of has a node right there with Francisco's and other like kind of commercial things at a well-identified area. Rennie Hill / Veterans Drive. This area has kind of a mix of both some residential, some single family, some multifamily, and some kind of office or lower impact kind of commercial uses on it. And we did also have a meeting with someone on veterans who had some ideas that also kind of spurred, catalyzed some of these ideas. And then M72 West Bay, there's a few currently zoned CO office commercial parcels right at the end of the Garfield Township portion, almost right before you get to Tom's West Bay, and south of 72. That's right about where the township ends and the city begins. But there's a few CO parcels right there, where there's sort of a commercial node. Granted, it's a busier highway, but not as intense commercial as some of the other commercial corridors. So that seemed to make sense as more of a neighborhood. No, so we just want to put this out there as sort of a, if we were to look at implementing, or at least attempting to kind of merge ideas from the master plan and what's currently in our zoning and ordinance to implement what's in the master plan, this is kind of a first draft of that. So, if anyone has any thoughts.
Commission?
Might add to that, as an example, Steve mentioned, we talked with a property owner here on Veterans Drive, just up the street from this Township Hall. This corridor is kind of a eclectic corridor. We have apartments, we have offices, we have the VFW hall, we got
Cemetery?
cemetery. So there's really kind of this mix, but it actually kind of works well for the most part. I mean, we don't see that we could see that maybe some of the commercial could continue, particularly if it's, maybe office-based or something like that. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to locate a Dollar General along this corridor, but you never know, they kind of pop up everywhere. But I don't,
Don't give 'em ideas.
it's not that type of, it's generally the speed of the road is 40, so it's a little bit slower than some of our other corridors. There is a lot
Still
of,
fast, though.
there's a lot of pedestrian traffic on here. And we know this obviously anecdotally, just because we drive it very often. But it's, and you can just look at the zoning, there's quite a bit of a mix in there. We have situations where you potentially could have somebody that maybe it was a single-family house is now converted into an office. Or we've seen it actually go the opposite way, where people have an office that was an old house and they want to convert it back to an old into a house. So we were thinking that this type of a district might actually work along here fairly well, but in terms of providing that kind of flexibility. We also thought in the other area is that Cedar Run campus area. Little sensitive to that one. It's a little bit different because it's got a lot of clinic space overflow from Munson Medical Center. Munson operates quite a few facilities along there, but does have a potential to create some varying uses along there. And I think we want to be somewhat protective of those clinic spaces because we know that the hospital needs space to grow. At the same time, there could be potential for that area. We have one property that we've had people come and look, and originally it was multifamily, and then it was rezoned several years ago to office, and they want to put multifamily on that property now. So maybe with the idea of providing residential for workers so that they can be close to their work at Munson Medical Center or maybe one of the clinics in that area. So maybe there's ability to look at this a little bit differently, understanding that there could be a better mix of uses. So those were the two that we kind of thought immediately might fit in where this type of district might be applied. When you look at the uses permitted by right, it's quite even at the bottom of that first part where under section A there, and you look at it, I mean, it allows quite a bit of different residential uses, but then it goes right into financial institutions and medical office clinics. So those are all uses permitted by right. On the second page, it continues on. It does have things like offices, professional showrooms, professional studios, low volume retail, and what that means is basically low volume. We've designed it by square footage. So I believe low volume retail is 5,000 square feet or less. So to give you some perspective, something like a Walgreens or so forth is usually about 10 to 12,000 square feet. So it would be a much smaller scale type of, could be some type of like a corner store, like you might see in the city somewhere where it provides for residents nearby could get certain things that they might need on a regular basis. And then we have uses permitted by special conditions. So those are uses essentially a permitted use, but there are conditions within the ordinance. They're not required to go through a formal process like a special use permit, but they have to adhere to those special conditions. In there, we have, you'll see under 6 there, dwelling multifamily, but it's 615, which is, that's the same thing that we already have, where you can go into any of our commercial districts and you can put residential above or behind a commercial business. So there's a condition in it. You can't necessarily build an apartment building onto its own, but if you did have, let's say, a retail store or some type of commercial business, you could put some apartments up above that. And then getting into the uses permitted by special permit, it gets a little bit more intensive. It does have like the child care center, the commercial district housing development. So that would be, that's similar to what you approved at 3066 Garfield, where it's a commercial district, but you can go multifamily. It has certain conditions that are required to go along with that. That would be a special use permit. None of these are what I would consider auto intensive. We did allow for some slightly auto. One is the financial institution with a drive-through. So we have that currently on this street here, where there's a credit union right across the street. It would allow something like that. The requirement there in 730 is that it can't have more than 2 drive-through lanes. So it's limiting in that factor. And then, for instance, like it says shopping center local, so that again is small scale. So that allows, I believe that would be, I want to say it was like 15,000 square feet. That would be allowed for like if you had a small strip center. So again, that would be special use permit. So it may or may not fit in this particular area. So those are the things that get maybe a little bit.
Kind of like Green Hill, there's like, you have a few things
Yeah.
right next to each other. Yeah, like
Right.
that scale.
Yeah, that's so those are the mix of uses that we're kind of thinking for this particular mixed use district.
Anybody have thoughts? John?
I think it makes some sense.
Yeah, I'm interested
If
in
we've
it.
got a zoning plan that talks about these things conceptually, we ought to put some areas where it can happen and mix it up.
Yeah, there's also, I think it's important to recognize that the uses are one thing, but I think design elements, site development requirements are really important. For instance, if you look under E3, if you could go on the aerial and look at Green Hill.
Yeah, let's just take a look.
So it says there, 1 vehicular maneuvering lane with parking spaces on each side is permitted in the front yard. Any remaining off-street parking areas shall be placed in rear or side yards. So if you look at like the hardware store there, or where Francisco's is at, it allows for 1 drive lane where you have parking on both sides, but you can't do 2 rows of that. And it's intended to create a more, you don't want a sea of asphalt in front of you want to provide some convenience, but if they need more parking, they can go to the side or to the rear, but you don't want that building being pushed back away from the road. It's intended to create some sense that it's more of a pedestrian scale, by there are cars allowed and cars are parking there. That building is somewhat closer to the street. It kind of gives you that sense that there's a little node here. At least as those are designed right now, those would be permitted based on that requirement.
I get what you're trying to achieve. I'm not certain that I guess if in your next presentation of information to us, I'm concerned that the Green Hill area really isn't big enough. And then I'm also concerned that how this mixed use, do you envision this is a first step, and then you're gonna bring a mixed use center, mixed use corridor, and there'll be kind of we'll look at all 3 of them at once, or are we gonna review and pass a zoning revision for each one, how do you see that going?
Well, at this point, I just want to kind of get your feedback and
Okay.
see what your thoughts are on this, because this kind of sets the template or the tone to see if we would do those other districts or not. Or if we are going to do those ones, what would they look like? So at this point, just trying to get your feedback.
Okay.
you
I mean,
know, of the way-
my thought is that I like what I'm seeing here. I'm not really sure that it's big enough or tall enough at 35 feet. And we need to create a zoning opportunity where somebody, a developer has the impetus to buy up a number of older, properties that have maybe outlived their life, as they are now, or create new value. I'm not sure that, that this is thinking big enough and creating enough opportunity. We need housing, and some of the areas we're looking at provide opportunities, particularly the Cedar Run District would provide an opportunity for this to happen on the edge of the city proper, in an area that sees a lot of traffic and doesn't offer a lot of, I live near there. There's not a lot of places to live in that area, which is walkable right into the city of Traverse City. So I would like to see something that offers a little bit more of more development, so that somebody might be compelled to, because this isn't going to happen one little parcel at a time. Somebody's going to have to aggregate some significant pieces of land and make this happen. That's my thought. If I'm wrong about that, then, that can be part of this mix, tell me.
Or current owners coming together to agree that, like, this
Yeah.
is a vision we need to
I don't think we
enact.
anticipate that we would go out and rezone properties. I think we would have it available, and it might just be over time. And then if we had a bunch of property owners come to us and make that request. But I think we were just kind of going to provide it and have it on the books, and then see how it could go in terms of rezoning properties to these types of districts. We have talked, in the memo there, it talks about a mixed-use neighborhood and then a center and a corridor. So the center would be something like our planned shopping center district. It would be like Grand Traverse Mall, the crossings, that area. It would be pretty intense and allow probably, higher buildings and so forth. It'd be intended to be more replicative of a town center. Walkable, but kind of intense like that. Corridor is, we're looking at maybe something along the 31 corridor. That we would probably see a lot of access management, cross-access standards similar to what we have in the commercial highway district. That commercial highway district zoning only applies to a portion of 31. We'd really there's some great standards in there. Like, it's basically those dark purple areas. All the red area is just general commercial. It doesn't have those same standards. The importance of that corridor and the ability to make improvements related to access management and cross-access and so forth, we feel like those standards could be applied all the way across that corridor, or all up and down. That's where that mixed-use corridor district would probably come into play. So that would be obviously our auto-intensive type of uses and so forth. But we thought of something in between neighborhood and center. We've kind of right now just calling it mixed-use suburban can't come up with a better name at this time, but that would be something that would maybe allow for a little bit higher intensity, that's kind of not necessarily auto-oriented, like the mixed-use center or the mixed-use corridor, but would allow some greater intensities maybe in terms of housing and other types of uses that might be compatible.
Well, my concern still then is really, we're creating potentially 4 of these, and we're waiting for somebody to come in and say, I want to ask to rezone to this so I can do this. And if this doesn't offer enough incentive for somebody to plunk down the capital to buy a bunch of property to make it happen, then I'm not sure what Molly?
Oh.
I have a quick question. John, are there any municipalities using this system that you're aware of? East Bay, Long Lake, any municipalities in Michigan using these
Mixed-use
guidelines?
districts, yeah, there's quite a few,
Are there?
yeah. I think you're gonna find them more in areas that have like urban form or urban development or in suburban development.
So the Detroit, southeast Michigan area, that
Yeah.
area,
Yeah, Grand Rapids area and so forth, yeah,
the mixed uses, okay.
yeah.
City, I believe, would too. I'm thinking about that like west front corridor. The particular parcel that came to mind was that Party Star, I don't remember the name, where they redeveloped and they have, I believe it's residential above,
West side.
West side.
West
Yeah.
side, yeah.
something like that, where there's a mix of uses, but the sort of street level frontage is still what it was, and they were just able to add value on top. Granted, the form is different because they are more right up to the right of way. The city more has that urban form, but sort of allowing for mixed uses. And it could be, potentially could be implemented in different ways. Like we talked about a mixed use corridor mostly being CH. It could just be reforming that one enough that that one just becomes a mixed use corridor. It's already applied in the areas it would be applied in.
So do you guys envision this applied to single parcels at a time? Maybe I'm misunderstanding completely. Like somebody takes a residential parcel and does mixed-use rezone for 150 feet of frontage on veterans here.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be done that way, but we're also looking at developing a zoning plan for this. So there's, so the zoning plan, when the Planning Enabling Act was amended and created that provision that master plans have to have a zoning plan, there wasn't really good direction from the statute on what that actually looks like. So what a lot of communities have ended up doing is kind of similar to what we have, is a table. Kind of shows, okay, here's the future land use designation. This is the types of zoning districts that we have in our zoning ordinance that would align with that future land use designation. But we were talking about, at least in concept, of actually developing a zoning plan map. And I've seen that before in some master plans that have actually done that. So we could actually look at, like when I mentioned, like the 31 corridor right here, rezoning through that whole particular corridor to the mixed-use neighborhood or the mixed-use corridor district.
Mm-hmm.
Molly?
So we could see it being in larger areas as opposed to just a piecemeal approach.
So I'm thinking of it in the same way that we did Cherryland Mall. It's one area. Now you could do this, 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 and this. You don't have to say, okay, I'm gonna buy a little piece of Kmart and rezone it. It's already there. If you look at Zimmerman and Silver Lake Road, maybe it's a pretty big area. Now, rather than those little houses that come from Francisco's and head down the hill, that kind of thing, those people have 5 acres or 10 acres or big pieces. They don't have to come back in for a rezoning. They're already in that district. It'll be a catalyst for somebody else because you'll be able to do multifamily now. You'll be able to do commercial, whatever it is that we decide are the standards for that area. So it's not I don't envision it as a way that you're gonna come in and buy 2 acres and apply to change the zoning in it. You know, it's already gonna be in the district. And so it'll be a catalyst for somebody to come in and buy it and use it that way. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's could be initiated by property owners or it could be initiated by the township. I think we're looking at, I mean, certainly like the Veterans Drive corridor here that we were just looking at, I could see us going through and adjusting the zoning for all those properties that would give them greater flexibility. Right now, it's like if you're in a office commercial district and you want to put a house on it, well, you got to go through a rezoning process. If we were to just recognize the diversity of that corridor, it's not the intensity of 31, but it has quite a variety. If we were to go through and rezone a lot of those properties, probably get a lot of relief and options for those property owners in a way to use their property that doesn't really, it's flexible uses, but uses that are generally compatible together in ways that we may have not already envisioned in our ordinance. I think
I'd
what,
like to see you pursue it.
Come.
I
It's
think
got
what,
a lot of potential that can help everybody.
I think what's probably, I think the application of it is something that I think we have some ideas, but I think what most important, what we want to have you really digest and think about is how these uses might mix together, and if you think that we have the right mix. We feel like we think we do, but it's something that we want to kind of get your thoughts on. You know, are we hitting the mark, or something, you know, should change or whatever? At least this would be the initial one, and then we, you know, like, as we go through those other ones, we can talk about those as well.
To that end, put some thought to the veterinary hospital and overnight stays of animals, and the appropriateness of putting that in a neighborhood district with residential and other uses. I know that there's a veterinary clinic on North Royal Drive or West Royal Drive right now. And, you know, those medical offices, as they exist in kind of an office park, that's, you know, that's suitable and appropriate. But if we're looking to have, I just don't know that you're gonna have somebody with a veterinary clinic on the first floor and then residential on the floors above.
Right.
And we probably wouldn't want that to be a use by right.
True.
Any other thoughts anybody has along the lines of those different uses permitted by right and special conditions and whatnot?
I just have a general question, which is admittedly a newbie question. What is the specific problem that we're trying to solve with defining these better? That's what I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around.
I think.
So if you look at like the veterans corridor, we,
Let's do zoning.
yeah, do
on it.
zoning.
Yeah.
So we'll use this as a test case. Is the property, one we used, it was the one that we were just talking about.
3479?
Yeah, 3479. If you recall, this was this happened, for some of you that were on the planning commission at the time, this happened, zoom in a little bit more.
Someone's
Yeah.
house and then they died.
Yeah, so they wanted to sell it. It was single family, the R1, which is the yellow, that's what that blue parcel was the R1 single family. And the trust, the family wanted to sell that, and they wanted to increase their options to what it might be used. And they thought at the time, and this was right before the pandemic, is to rezone it to office. And so we're like, looked at that, it did go through, they rezoned it to office. Well, there's a house on that, and it may have converted to an office for a brief time, but the current owner has it as a house. And so they want to expand their house. Well, it's a legal non-conforming structure, it can't be expanded. And we're like, well, that's where he's at. So what he would have to do right now is to go back and rezone it to the R1 single family, to what it was previously. And we're like, I don't want to have to flip-flop constantly to do that. In recognizing that this corridor has those types of structures. They could be a house, it could be an office, could be maybe a small shop or something of that nature that fits in there. So we wanted to say, okay, if we're gonna do this, and when we met with the owner, we've said we've already drafted this, and I said, we're gonna take it to the planning commission, and we wanna get their feedback on it, but ideally, maybe there's a district that we could rezone this to, and you would be done with it, and because they talked about maybe some other uses there that would be I think they talked about like, kind of like a child care operation there, that would complement what they're already doing there in terms of their house that's located there. It'd be more of an accessory use.
Molly?
But it wouldn't just be for the benefit of one property owner. It would be a corridor. It would be in a geographic area. So everybody who's in there could have the same benefits.
We would probably, in this particular case, we would evaluate the current zoning and the types of properties that are there in terms of their buildings and the uses that are already in place, whether they're conforming or non-conforming. So we would probably look mainly at the frontage on that. Back, and you get in the neighborhoods there, those are clearly single-family residential or apartment complexes or whatever. But that frontage is varied enough, and the corridor is busy enough that we think we could provide some relief to those property owners and give some greater flexibility. I mean, I don't see that this corridor is changing anything significant at this time. I mean, we're not seeing any new construction along here for the most part, but those buildings do offer some opportunities to maybe have some different options depending on who's in there at any given time.
That's what I'm concerned about, in the sense that, don't we want to create an opportunity for somebody to actually invest in? It's a high traffic road, but it's basically developed the way it was built out in the 70s. And so don't we want to try and offer an opportunity for redevelopment that is on par with the amount of traffic and this neighborhood that we're looking for, in a way that doesn't just leave us with, I mean, it is really an awkward situation, and somebody wants to expand their home because I guess they like living there, but for our community, again, don't we want to move towards more use of this high-traffic corridor? At least provide the opportunity for more use.
Right.
I see what you're saying. I think maybe like when we looked at West Front Street, that might be a little bit more conducive to that, just because its proximity to some of the big draws in there, employers and whatnot. This corridor, it really has a residential feel to it. It's not as busy as like Cass or some of the other north-south corridors. And like I said, you see a lot of people walking. It feeds, if you cross Veterans over into across South Airport, you're into, more residential. It's really a residential, I would say this is more of a residential neighborhood that has some commercial into it. So I agree with what you're saying. I don't know about this particular corridor, but I definitely see it in maybe some of our other corridors in our other areas. I see, in terms of intensity of uses, I would see it being kind of continuous to what's in the city. So going essentially down Rennie Hill here and down to 14th Street. So what we have, that type of residential coming up the hill here and going down Veterans would be similar.
Higher density residential, though.
Yeah, I think there could be some infill in here. I certainly see that. I think in this,
Especially along the frontage.
yeah, along the
Yeah, I'm
frontage.
focusing on the frontage. I'm
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
I'm not thinking of the neighborhoods,
Yeah,
the more
That's fine.
traditional neighborhoods and
Yep.
the existing multifamily that backs away from it. It's just that, a lot of these structures are older, and we can either offer an opportunity for flexibility in continuing to go back and forth between a house and an office building or a doctor's office or something, or we can provide for flexibility that somebody can make an investment in putting some new structures up.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think the scale of it, I think in this particular district, 3 stories or 35 feet, I think would be appropriate in the scale for this.
I mean,
Area here
to me, the thing that sets the tone is the height of the township offices we're in right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it provides that buffer too, for the residential that's kind of behind, but I think it has the potential to be a very walkable corridor,
Right.
because we do see people biking and walking all up and down here because there's so many housing units around this particular area, and it's a good It's a great location too, particularly for people that want to get it, whether they're going, towards South Airport Road and accessing the commercial businesses there, or going into the city and into the north.
Anyone else? So I for one look forward to seeing this continue to develop. It looks like it could be pretty cool.
It could dovetail into some master plan conversations too.
We can, actually, if you'd like, we can start grafting some of the, we actually have them in some form, so those other districts, and we can provide those. Or would you just prefer to maybe focus on this initially?
John?
I think I'd like the idea of seeing the others that you've got, if you already got started on them, but.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yep, good. I think there's agreement. Yeah, we'd like to look at all of them at once.
Okay, sounds good.
If you're also interested, we can try putting together this like zoning plan map to actually envision like what might this look like.
I'd like that. I'm not sure everybody else feels about it. I'd like to see it not like parcels per se, but just kind of maybe for now a blob, so we can get an
Yeah.
idea of the scale.
Get some fuzzy edges to it.
Yes. Is that everybody else?
Yeah, like
I don't
that.
want anybody to come rushing in here and say, wait a second, I want that or I don't want that.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that would be areas, it would be basically the zoning, where these zoning districts would be applied within the township on a zoning map. So it
And
wouldn't
I-
have anything to do with the future land use, but it'll
You
show
already
you
have
what we're
s-
thinking about it.
You already have sketch of these areas from our master plan, right? So it'd just be a matter of kind of pulling it into the packet for the discussion.
It'd be like turning that into a zoning
Yeah,
plan. It would take a step or two from that, but would be the basis to start from.
yeah, the zoning, or excuse me, the future land use map has mixed-use neighborhoods and mixed-use centers. These districts could also be applied to some, like I was mentioning on 31, which is our general commercial and commercial highway districts. So we would apply that to that, which is in a
Mhm.
much larger area than one of
Right.
those purple areas, so.
A lot of those mixed-use areas also are currently in planned unit developments. This is getting back to take like a large view at the end here, almost philosophical, like just wanting to evaluate what would it be to have some different tools in the toolbox, because the township has done PUDs a lot, which is a very useful tool, but it has some limitations to it and some challenges, as we've seen amending some PUDs. It is a little cumbersome. You start to get individualized ordinances for each one of these, and it sort of extends the ordinance and set of regulations. And if it's sort of the philosophy of a PUD, part of it is some of these things are not achievable in any single zoning district. Well, part of the mixed use is to make some of these things achievable in a single zoning district. And I also thought of back to the last year, the National Planning Conference. There's a community, granted it's a much larger community, but they completely redid their zoning ordinance, converted all of their commercial base districts to mixed use base, and got rid of all their PUDs. Granted, that was a very big philosophical decision for that community, but more of a incremental approach when we've already got a good base to start from, and then we can start taking a look at some of these might make sense with the districts we have now, but in a corridor especially like this, or maybe front, where you've got a mix already, it doesn't make sense to develop something that would make it easier going forward for whatever comes there.
Sounds good. So
All
I
right.
think you guys got some direction. We look forward to seeing
Mm-hmm.
the next round. So we'll move on. Either of you gentlemen like to make any public comment? All right. Moving past public comment, we don't have anything on our agenda for other business. So we'll move on to item number 10. Next agenda, I think we kind of already touched on it. We've got these 3 items, but perhaps there'll be a few more that'll get added to that agenda based on
Yeah.
pending applications or applications in progress.
Yep.
Anything you want to bring to our attention, or we'll see it when we get there?
We'll see it when we get there.
Very good.
A motion, we get adjourned.
Thanks, Bob. We're adjourned.